Hi class, this is a video on factoring and solving quadratic equations. So let's get started. Okay, say we have this equation. How do we solve that? Since there's an x squared and an x, we can't solve it directly, so we have to factor. And we basically have the zero product principle, which is just basically if a times b is equal to 0, then what can we say about a and or b? Well, one of them must be 0. If a times b is 0, one of them must be 0. So we have a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. And that's the zero product principle, but it just makes sense. Okay, so if we have this, we have to factor it. So a bit of review on factoring. How do we factor this? Well, that's a minus and this is a plus. And to factor, it's got to be a product of 35. So what are the factors of 35? Well, we have 1 times 35. We also have 7 times 5. And the difference is 2, so we can make that work. So we got x and an x. Okay, is equal to 0. If we have, if we put plus 7 here and minus 5 here, we get it, right? We get x squared minus 5x plus 7x, which is a plus 2x, and minus 35. And we get exactly that, so we factor. And that's how we factor things. It has to be, the product must be this, and the addition must come up to the middle one. And we have x and x, so x squared. All right, now we use the zero product principle. If that times that is equal to 0, then either x plus 7 is equal to 0, or x minus 5 is equal to 0. And so we solve this. Clearly x is equal to minus 7 by observation, or just subtracting 7. So there's one solution, or x is equal to 5 by observation, or just by adding 5 to that side. Now, does it work? Let's try 5. 5 squared is 25, plus 10 is 35, minus 35 is 0. It works. And you can try this one too. Minus 7 squared is 49, plus a negative 14 minus 35 is 49 minus 49, or 0. So they both work. And that's how we solve it. When we have an x squared and an x term, then we have to factor. So this is a video on factoring and solving these equations. Let's try another one. Say we have x squared minus 4x, and we can do it like this, is equal to 45. All right, how do we solve that? Again, we can't solve for x directly because there's an x squared and x, so we have to bring everything over to one side. Minus 45 is equal to 0. Then we factor this. Now, how do we factor? What are the factors of this? Well, 1 times 45, but it's also 9 times 5. And the difference, there's a few others, 3 times 15, right? But the difference right here, 9 and 5 is 4, so we can make that work. So it's x minus something times x plus something, right? It has to be a plus and a minus to get a negative term here. And so there's more negatives, so we put a minus 9 and a plus 5 is equal to 0. Does that work? Well, we have x squared, sure. Plus 5x minus 9x is minus 4x. Yeah, that works. And that times that is minus 45. Yep, it works. So we have x minus 9 is equal to 0, or x is equal to 9, or x plus 5 is equal to 0, or x is equal to minus 5. And you can check them. Let's check this one. Let's see, 9 times 9 is 81, minus 36, and 81 minus 36 is in fact 45. And I'll let you check that one. Okay. Now, so we have 3x squared is equal to 2 minus 5x. Okay, well, we have to factor this one. This one's slightly more complicated, but we bring everything over to one side, so plus 5x minus 2 is equal to 0. Now we have to factor this. This product is 1 times 2, that's it. This one's 1 times 3. Okay, so now we have to get these, the product of this one times this one with the other one to add up to 5, and I see it already. If we take 3 and 2, 3 times 2 is 6. And 1 and the 1, we'll join the 1 and the 1, right? Minus 1 is equal to 5. So let's see if we can make that work. We got 3x and just x, right? It's a 3 and the 1. Okay, well, the 3's got to multiply with the 2 to get 6, so let's put the 2 over here. So therefore, this one is here. And now where's the plus and the minus? Okay, so the 3 and the 2 has got to be positive, so that's a positive, and that one would be the minus. It's equal to 0. Did we factor that correctly? 3x times x is 3x squared, plus 6x minus an x is 5x, yep, and then that times that is a minus 1, so we got it. All right, so that's a factor, a trinomial where a is not equal to 1. So we have 3x minus 1 is equal to 0, or x plus 2 is equal to 0. So x is equal to minus 2 is one solution. And notice with these x squared and x, we're always getting two solutions because this is a second degree equation. Over here, we have 3x is equal to 1 and x is equal to 1/3. And those are our two solutions. Okay. Now there's an interesting one. If I have x squared is just equal to 8x, right? We can cancel out the x's, and we have x is equal to 8. And you might think that's the only solution. We divide both sides by x, and x is equal to 8. You might say that's the only solution. But by observation, x can also be equal to 0, right? 0 squared is equal to 8 times 0. So those are our two solutions. Now, how do we get that from this equation other than by observation? Well, again, we can bring everything over to one side. X squared minus 8x is equal to 0. Now we can factor out an x. X times x minus 8 is equal to 0. So we have either the zero product rule. I mean the zero product principle. We have either x is equal to 0 or x minus 8 is equal to 0. And we get x is equal to 8. And so we have our two solutions as we did by observation here. Clearly, 8 times 8 is equal to 8 times 8, or divided by x. X is equal to 8. Okay, so we have two solutions actually, and that's what we would think. Okay. Now, we can also have something like this. X squared minus 6x plus 9 is equal to 0. And if we factor this, that's actually an x. That's a 3 times a 3, and that adds up to 6. So x minus 3 times x minus 3. So we have x minus 3 is equal to 0, or the same thing, so we just have to write it once, or x is equal to 3. So there's a solution. And just a side note, quadratic equations basically, look like this as a graph. So sometimes, if this is our x-axis and y-axis, sometimes the graph looks like this and we get two solutions. Sometimes the graph looks like this one and it just touches there. We get one solution, which is the case right here. This is really, x minus 3 quantity squared is equal to 0. And sometimes we get no solutions where the graph looks like this and it never touches the x-axis. It's never 0. And so there would be no solution. So 2 solutions, 1 solution, or no solutions. Okay. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video and it was helpful for your learning. Cheers.